Okay, according to my clock, we are already 5 minutes after the starting time. Let's start slowly as we waiting for more of our registrants to show up. Hello, everyone. My name is Wenhong Chen. I'm the chair of the Global Communication and Social Change Division. And I'm very, very thankful to all our panelists and participants today as we start our first ever job search workshop for junior scholars hosted by our very own division. Before we start, I would like to introduce all our panelists so that we can give you their most useful or valuable piece of advice for job market. Okay, I will go with the order on our flyer. So first, we have Professor Karin Wilkins, who is the Dean of School of Communication at the University of Miami. And second, we have Professor Bingchun Meng, who's a professor in the Department for Media and Communication at LSE. She also co-directs the LSE Fudan Global Public Policy Research Centers. Professor Meng is currently the director of LSE's PhD Academy in the Economic and Social Research Council Doctoral Training Partnership. And we also have Professor Chikezie Uzuegbunam, who is the Deputy Head, School of Journalism and Media Studies at Rhodes University. And we have also two officers from our division. First, Dr. Dani Madrid-Morales. Dani is the lecturer at School of Journalism, Media and Communication at University of Sheffield. Dani also served as the director of postgraduate research at his school. And last but not least, we have Madenga, who is an assistant professor in communication department and the African and African Diaspora Studies program at Boston College. So we are very proud of our panelists because, as you can see, they really bring in a lot of experience, not only for job search, but also as leaders who recruit students and junior and senior faculty members. So without any further ado, let's start with our first panelist. Karin, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much. I want to thank Wenhong for this invitation, and Wenhong and Dani and others for leading the division that I care so deeply about. They asked me to think about three things, and so I'm going to briefly talk about three guiding points, and then later happy to answer questions. I've been involved in academic job searches and other kinds of job searches for a long time. My 3 points that I'm going to talk about: first, know yourself; second, learn about your potential professional home; and third, stay connected to your professional network. So knowing yourself, know what your strengths are and what you enjoy doing and what you value. You really need to know what it is you care about, and that'll help guide you in terms of the kinds of positions you might want to apply for. I started myself working at the Pew Charitable Trust before going into an academic position, and it was a good experience for me. Some of you might really enjoy teaching, and that might steer you towards the kinds of positions where you'd have a higher course load. Some of you might really enjoy your research. So knowing yourself helps you think about what kind of place you want to work, whether it's a university or an agency or something else. Then second, learning about your potential professional home. There's what you can learn formally and what you need to learn implicitly. Formally, you'll read a job posting, and job postings are written with intentional strategic ambiguity. It's a great communication theory approach. Job posts are often written in committees, and so sometimes they're confusing when you read explicitly what there is. So you want to understand that you don't need to fit all of the criteria in a job post. You want to think about what are the pieces that resonate with your strengths and your interests. But then I also want to talk just very briefly about the implicit community that you might be getting into. It's worth paying attention to the positives as well as potential red flags. When you have a Zoom interview or you get an interview in person, pay attention not only to are they friendly to you, but are they friendly to each other? Because you want to think about your future professional home as a place that would be supportive to the ways that you want to work. There are also sometimes potential red flags. And I'll give you a very brief story of something that happened to me 30 years ago. I was asked in an interview, what do you do worst? And I said, just off the top of my head, make coffee, because I'm really, really bad at it. And what they said to me was, what are you, some kind of feminist? And I thought, well, maybe this isn't where I want to go. So you want to pay attention to those subtle kinds of cues. The last thing, stay connected to your professional network. This is where I think it's important to keep time in mind. We often think, we need a job right away, but we also want to think long-term. Staying connected to your professional network by going to conferences, by being connected in things like this. You think about your long-term career, not just the immediate goals, because our careers do matter over time, and many things change over time, either in our personal lives, our professional lives, in our communities, our policies. So staying connected to your professional networks, I think, is important to that long-term time horizon. And I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karin. And now let's save all our questions after all our panelists share their wisdom. So Bingchun, you are the next one.
All right. Actually, I think my 3 points already have quite a lot of overlap with Karen's. The first point I was gonna say is pretty much, it's just a different phrasing of what Karin already said. I think, first of all, before you start the whole job searching process, really is about what do you want and what do you enjoy doing the most. And if we think about different kind of academic jobs and also think about the possibility of also being open to pursuing a non-academic career path, I think really that's the first thing you would like, to clarify for yourself. And I see also on some of my former PhD students, I think some of them enjoy teaching more, and they really get stronger fulfillment from teaching, and then they opt for a more teaching focused position or more teaching focused institution, as opposed to others who would want to pursue a more research intensive career. But I think increasingly also facing the reality of academic job market, I think PhD students are also exploring non-academic career path. And I think it's important to keep that option open. And I've also had friends who just got non-academic job right after PhD and never looked back. And because, she knew that she always enjoyed explaining complicated issues to layperson. And she also knows that she has a set of transferable skills that could very well equip her to work in the consultancy setting. So I think really that's the first thing you want to get some clarity on. And the second thing I want to say, and I think it's also related to Karen's last point about maintaining connection, that is, ultimately, I think job search is not it's not lottery, in the sense that, we all know how competitive job market is. We all tend to think, okay, if I see the position, I'm gonna send an application. But really, ultimately, it's down to the fit. It's not trying your luck. But in order to understand better whether it is a really good fit, it requires some knowledge that you wouldn't be able, and information you wouldn't able to glean from the job advert itself. And that's why often it's important to talk to people at the conference, to talk to people, just outside a more formal setting of the recruitment, just to get a better sense about, what is it, what's the kind of profile that that department or that institution was really looking for. And often that kind of information only come to you through networking, through maintaining the network rather than reading the advert itself. And lastly, I think, we when Wenhong invited me to this panel, I was also hesitating a bit, in the sense that I do realize that the kind of experience I had, 15 years ago, is already very different from the kind of job market that people are facing nowadays. I think PhD students, postdocs, and junior scholars are now facing. I think it's a far more competitive environment. And I think maybe the last thing I want to say in this context really is, you only need one job. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Bingchun. I know the pressure is higher for our rest three panelists. Okay, Chikezie, you are the next one.
Thanks, Wenhong, and I think it's really lovely to see everyone in the room. The first thing I want to say is that as an early career scholar, there may be many things that are out of your control, and it can be quite scary. It can be quite a scary, uncertain, and precarious time. And so I would tell you, first of all, to be kind to yourself, because you have come so far already, and it's important to acknowledge your journey and your accomplishments so far. To also remember that what you're facing is normal and that you're not alone. I think this basis is important. And more importantly, that there is a place for you out there, and that all is going to be well. All is going to be well. And so if you have that kind of foundational knowing in you, it really is important for you to work with confidence. And so I say, do not let the feeling of imposter syndrome or anxiety about the future stop you. Everyone has imposter syndrome, including people that you admire and people that you look up to. Another tip that I will give you is to start now to get your CV in order. I say this all the time, that it's really important to build a great CV. In my time, I had my PhD 6 years ago. I had a very weird habit of looking at other scholars' CVs. It was really a side hobby for me, and I looked at people's CVs to get a sense of the work that they have done, how they articulated the work they were doing, and the work they have done. And I got inspired by the opportunities they've had, and I tried to see how I could intentionally manifest some of those. So please update your CVs often. Document the things that you're doing, including the things that you do for free. I can offer you a few tips on how to work on your CV if you want to follow up with me after. That's perfectly fine. The other thing I would say is for you to be visible. It's important to build an online trace of your work. Create a Google Scholar account, ResearchGate, Academia, Web of Science, all of these accounts that keep track of your scholarly footprints, your publications, your citations, your H indexes, your peer review work that you're doing, and so on. Because I think that these are really useful metrics and esteem indicators for when you are applying for things, especially academic things. In addition, these days, a lot of connections and opportunities are really happening on the timelines of professional spaces like LinkedIn and in academic spaces such as conferences and mailing lists. So I say join professional academic associations, attend their conferences, and meet like-minded people who can be instrumental to your career. Join mailing lists where various kinds of opportunities are shared often. And then I will say something that may sound funny, but it's true. Have a great email culture. As an emerging scholar, you wouldn't know opportunities you stand to lose for having a tardy email culture. I think that responding to emails early, especially emails about when someone sends you an opportunity for you to look at, maybe there's a deadline, maybe there's a time crunch to it. Responding to emails early really shows you as a serious academic. And while you're on your doctoral program or your postdoc, look for and accept opportunities to teach, to supervise, to mentor undergrads or junior postgraduate students. Do some admin work, volunteer for leadership duties. Maybe look for visiting research fellowships, chase some grants, no matter how small. And the point is that when you do all of these things, please add them to your CV because they also increase your esteem indicators. Stay in touch with your supervisor, your academic mentors, your colleagues in your department. I think that a successful transition from PhD to postdoc or from postdoc to something more long-term or something or a tenured position can be dependent sometimes on your continued relationship with your supervisor, mentors, and colleagues. And I think that if you have a good supervisor, they can actually quickly become your friends or confidants right after your PhD. And the next thing I would say is to find your niche as you transition, because it's important to be honest with yourself about whether you really like and want to remain in academia or you don't. So, because not every PhD has to go into full-time academic practice. So it's important that you do you. Lastly, it's important to also worry more about what you want to do rather than what you want to become. So the key word here is then doing. You have to be someone who is action and doing oriented rather than just talk and making plans and fantasizing and dreaming about what you want to be. And really, whatever opportunity that you have, give it your all. If you're working with a PI or department or funders or supervisors, impress the hell out of the team or out of the, impress the people that you work with. Be unforgettable, because I think that excellence makes you unforgettable. Be excellent, be an excellent doctoral fellow or postdoctoral fellow. And what this would do for you is that this will show you and others what kind of academic that you will be. So thank you and good luck.
Thank you so much. These are very useful, practical advice. Dani, you are the next.
Thank you, Wenhong, for organizing this, and I'm happy to see a lot of familiar faces in the audience. I am going to share with you a bit of my experience transitioning from a PhD in Hong Kong to a assistant professor job in the US, and then shift to a job in the UK. And based on that experience, I think my first tip is to understand well the nuances of each of the academic markets. I think, I don't know where many of you are currently doing your PhD, but when I did my PhD in Hong Kong, I did not understand the US market very well. I understood the Hong Kong context, but I did not understand the US context very well. So when I tried to enter the market in the US, for me, it was a struggle. And I think that I had a similar situation when I moved from the US to the UK. And the reason why I'm highlighting this is because the markets or the expectations in the hiring process are quite different. For example, when you enter the US, there's quite a structured way of hiring people. There's likely to be a Zoom interview first, and then from there, if you progress, you're likely to get invited to a campus visit. And that campus visit is almost like a ritual with sort of a set of activities that almost happen all the time. There's going to be one-on-one meetings with the faculty. You might have a breakfast or a lunch. There'll be a research talk. There'll be a teaching demo, all of those things. And I prepared a lot for those. When I moved to the UK, none of that existed, right? So I was hired after one single Zoom interview. And that means each of these markets gives you different opportunities to showcase who you are and who you want to be. So all the things that Karin, Chikezie, and Bingchun have suggested. If anyone in the room, I'll talk a little bit about the UK because I think the US market, there's a lot of information out there. But if anybody's thinking of transitioning from wherever you are to the UK, for example, the UK market has less emphasis on publications. It's less likely that you will be immediately shortlisted purely based on your publications, and it tends to hire a more holistic researcher. But at the same time, because there's no teaching demo, and there's oftentimes not a chance for one-on-one interactions with your future colleagues, a lot is based on the performance of the interview. Therefore, it's very important that you prepare very carefully for that one occasion where you have to impress the panel. So that's the first thing, understand the market. And if during the Q&A, anybody has specific questions about what's unique about the UK, I'm happy to take those. And I'm sure that Bingchun also will have some suggestions there. The second piece of advice that I have, which connects a little bit to what Karin was saying at the beginning, I think it's very important to have what I would call a 5-year plan. Some people say a 5 or a 10-year plan. And prepare that 5-year plan at the beginning of your PhD studies, and obviously keep it updated as you progress because things change, as Karin says, like life changes. So this plan might change, but having a 5-year plan sort of gets you a sense of direction towards where you want to go and what are the things that you want to do. But also, it sets some milestones that you have to achieve along the way to be able to be marketable when you get to the end point. So when I was doing my PhD in Hong Kong back in 2013, there was this talk about to get a job in the US, you need 3 publications. There was this magic number that everybody was saying 3 publications. And then that number transitioned to 4, and that sometimes was 5. And then somebody said, no, you need 6 now, right? All those numbers are, as I learned after sitting in search committees, just numbers. Searches don't really look at a specific number, but this to say that I set myself a goal, say, oh, if 3 is the number, I'm going to aim towards that number. So that 5-year plan, it's also important because oftentimes doing interviews, you're going to be asked about what is your next research project, or how are you going to expand from your dissertation to the next steps in your career, or are you going to look at grants and what grants do you want to try to apply to when you get a job? So the 5-year plan is an important part of the process, I'd say. And the final very practical piece of advice is for all my job searches, and I'm just posted the link on the chat, what helped me the most was this one book called The Professor is In, which many of you may have heard in the past. I think that shaped a lot of my understanding of the job market, and I found it extremely, extremely useful. It's very focused on the US, but if anyone is trying to enter the US job market, this book, I think, is almost like I wouldn't call it a Bible, but whatever your book of reference is. I think it's an important piece of reading. And I'll stop here for now, and then if there's any questions, we can discuss later.
Thank you, Dani. That's one of the most useful books out there for job search and useful at a various stage when you are on the market, from looking for jobs to negotiating the offer. Okay, so Flor, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm out of the
Yes, yes. Okay. Now the grand finale.
Thank you. So I had the benefit of listening to everybody. So I'm just going to build on what's already been said and also offer things that were very unique to my experience. So really quickly, I was in graduate school here in the US. I was at the University of Pennsylvania, and I went right on the market as an international student, and while I was ABD. So it was a steep learning curve, which is why I co-signed that book, because a lot of the things to me didn't come naturally, especially culturally. So like reading between the lines and that sort of thing. So that was helpful as a baseline. So I'll sort of like go through what else was useful, you know, after I read the book and sort of got my materials together. One unique challenge was sort of balancing quantity with quality. So I got all sorts of advice about applying widely versus sort of like how to tailor. I decided for my situation and my energy level at the time, I was only going to apply to the US. So I only applied to like 15 jobs. And then told my advisor I was applying to like 30, but to calm her down. But to me, a piece of advice I got on that was in order for me to tailor the way I wanted to tailor things, I just didn't have time to do 30 to 50 applications. I was also applying interdisciplinarily, so I had to tailor it to the way that I knew the place I wanted to go would appreciate, and that made sense with my work. Right now, you have to be instinctive about what the market looks like for you, right? The kinds of places you want to be. But I think that so like figuring out where the sweet spot is with that balance would be great. I also realize now that I'm on the other side, on the faculty side of this, that everyone is qualified, right? So you have to go beyond, I have a PhD and my research is good. You know, you have to tailor it to the particular institution and culture and even department, right? So this is where whisper networks kind of help to sort of like what do folks actually need there? What's the culture there in your materials? The second thing is just organization is everything. Systems. You need to put systems in place. Folks young sort of in graduate school, you know, you have systems about, so like the conferences you go to, you're publishing, and so like that pipeline, you want to approach the job market in a similar way. So I had a spreadsheet just sort of like updating the kinds of listings I was seeing. I had a separate spreadsheet for all my letter writers on the onset so they could sort of see the progress of where it's going, so that when things came up, they knew where to go immediately. I didn't have to sort of like send a million emails and do this and that. In the US market particularly, things move really slow and then they go really fast. So my experience was you would apply, no, you didn't hear from anybody. Then the moment you get on like a short list, you got to get on that campus visit. They're telling you to come in 2 weeks from now. You have to have prepared, you know, your slides for everything. So having those things on the onset, even just sending that energy out, even if you haven't gotten anything yet, just having it there, I think builds confidence. To have those systems there, because this can be really, really overwhelming. This is where that book too helps. The professor is in. So I think she's helpful in sort of tempering expectations. She's also a sociologist. She has very specific pieces of advice. So you want to read that and also tailor it to the things you are doing in a way that makes sense. The fashion advice, for instance, did not work for me, but you know, that's helpful. So like as a baseline. The third thing I want to share is this is not the time to be coy about the fact that you're looking for a job. Right? Shout it from the rooftops. Tell all your mentors. When you go to conferences, tell people you're on the market. Tweet about it if you're on social media. So the job I ended up getting, and many of the jobs I was then shortlisted for, so that was postdocs. And this job were from folks that heard that I was looking for a job and then send me that job. Or folks that sort of like had openings in their departments and then told me about, actually they told me about how I might fit there, right? So that helped me sort of formulate my materials in a certain way. Right now, you know, I'm more outgoing, so I'm like okay with doing those things. But you know, figure out a way that works for you to let people know that you're in the market. So those would be my 3.
Thank you so much, Flora, and my gratitude to all the panelists. I have learned so much for job search, and thank you for refreshing all our job market memories, good and bad, fun and scary. So now I think I would like to open the floor to our participants because you are the ones who we want to serve through this workshop. So feel free to ask questions either directly or on the chat. So let's start. Any questions? Don't be shy. As for just like you cannot be shy on the job market. So I got 2 hands. So first one is from Xiaodong from Colorado border.
Thank you, Dr. Chen, and thank you, everyone, panelists, senior scholars share so many meaningful and useful things to us. I have a question for Dr. Meng. So I like you talked about keep open about non-academic works. But for now, I'm still, my situation is I'm still in my coursework and my department is really critical, theoretical things driven. So I don't know what kind of I can prepare for like applying a non-academic job. So do you have any like very, I would not say very specific, but like kind of, I don't know, like practical things I need to, focus on, prepare something like that. Thank you.
I guess, this job searching is a rather sort of it's a recursive process in the sense that it's hard to say that what are the things you need to acquire or learn during the PhD in order to prepare for a specific non-academic job. I think it depends on when opportunity presents itself. But I think what's probably is useful is as you go through your PhD journey, you have some reflection about what are some of the transferable skills you have. And also think about, if I'm not going to write an academic paper or address an academic research question, with the kind of knowledge base I have, with the kind of analytical writing skills I have, what are some of the questions in other settings that I'm very well equipped to tackle? I guess if you think from the perspective of your skill set and your capacity, rather than thinking specifically, what kind of job I need to prepare for, that's probably more useful in the sense that you keep your options open. And I think also it's your own preference and your knowledge about yourself is also still developing. So you might reach a point you think that, I would definitely want to pursue an academic career, or, I want to work in a particular setting. So I think maybe it's more useful to think about, what does a PhD do for you, aside from the possibility of preparing you for an academic career path? What else does it do for you?
I'd like to offer a little bit here as well, because I think this is a really important issue for all of us to think through. What is it that we're learning with our doctoral studies and our early career scholarship? And it does give you options. You have skills to do a lot of different things. And I heard you mention critical scholarship. Critical scholarship is important to a variety of research agencies. And something practical, I'll suggest, in the same way you look at your literature review for who's publishing and which journals are interested in your topic, look at which agencies are funding those research projects. Look at people who are keynote speakers from outside of academia, and consider that your network, because the network of possibilities for places you could apply, it's not only universities, it's think tanks, it's a variety of agencies. So if you take a look at who's interested in your topic, that could help as well.
We have 3 hands on. Thank you, Bingchun and Karin. So how about we collect all 3 questions, then our panelists can jump in. So Harvey, Lijian, and Armando. So please ask your questions.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Chen, and thank you to our speakers for sharing your knowledge. I really appreciate your comments. My question, so I'm on the job market now, and I've started applying. But I have a question about the H-1B, and I wonder, as an international student, I wonder whether any people, any speakers or people on the call have experience with what conversations you're having in your departments about how this will change how you deal with hiring students on F1 visa, if anything. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for this question. I'm sharing two things. One is an article, a gift article. You can just click on the link from New York Times today, talking about how universities are responding to the H-1B issue. And the second is an update from my own university. As you can understand, many people are very, very concerned about H-1B right now in the US. But I think right now, the universities are monitoring the situation. There's no clear answer on that yet. So feel free to check those two links out. So H-1B and Li Jin, your question?
Yeah, thank you for the panelists to put together this wonderful advices that is really necessary at this point. And I have two questions generally. I'm also currently on the job market in line with what Javi is saying about H-1B. So I'm wondering, like, now a lot of students currently in the US are trying to apply elsewhere because of the H-1B issue. So I'm wondering if the panelists could say more about like how to navigate job market elsewhere, like what kind of like maybe processes like for UK market or US market or like Asian like Hong Kong market, like what are the academic culture maybe or hiring practices that we should be aware of in the process of navigating this process. And my second question is more for Florence, but also other panelists, if it applies, is to apply for jobs interdisciplinary. Like what are the obstacles? Because this is something I'm trying to do, but I find it very difficult to navigate this kind of process. I wanted to hear more about your advice on that. Thank you.
Very good. And Armando, your question.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. I just wanted to say thank you so much for this amazing presentation for all of our panelists. I think it's very important to have this kind of discussion, particularly for me as an emerging scholar. So this was very, very helpful. I just wanted to explore the idea from Dr. Dani about understanding the academic market. I am based in Africa. I'm a student. I'm Dr. Chikezie, a student from Rhodes University. And I wanted to ask, what is unique about Africa? I know that Dr. Dani has experience in terms of research work in Africa, and I would pose the same question also to Dr. Chikezie. What do we need to understand about the context of Africa? And finally, I wanted to ask Dr. Bingchun, I think I'm pronouncing it quite well, about this idea of having only one job. Could you please expand a little bit more on that? Thank you.
Very good. So now our panelists, your turn to address these questions. H-1B, looking for a job beyond the US, looking for a job beyond the communication, the media disciplines, and also applying job from Africa. And also between, working on one job rather than moving from one to another.
I can start with some very specific advice, for example, on the US and the UK and the Hong Kong market. So I'll give you an example, Ijun. When I moved from the US to the UK, I had an interview with a couple universities, and one of the questions that I was asked is, what is your experience in leadership? Which is an important part of academic culture in the UK. And my honest response coming from the US was, I have no experience. And that wasn't helpful for my job application, right? And I'm giving you this example to show that I did not know what they meant by leadership in the UK. So I think what's important when you enter a new market is to understand what is the expectation for people at the position that you're applying to. So at an early career researcher in the UK, maybe it's not so important that you have a lot of publications, but you have a broader range of skills, and it might also change from institution to institution. Difficult to generalize, I mean, but the UK also places quite a lot of importance on sort of the wider impact of your work. You want to show that some of the work that you're doing has the potential to have an impact beyond the specific place or the specific academic environment. And oftentimes in the UK, when a job is posted, there's two main documents. There's sort of a summary, like what gets posted on the website saying, oh, we're looking for this. But then also there's alongside there's a PDF with a lot of different items or categories that you are expected to fill in that. And I think many people forget to look into that. So that would be an example that's different. Another difference is, as the US has a very specific cycle of hiring. Hiring starts in the summer and then it goes on for 12 months. The UK has a much shorter span. So you need to be on the lookout for on a constant basis. For those wanting to find jobs in the UK, the main website to find jobs is jobs.ac.uk. Some jobs might be posted on Chronicle, but not so much. So jobs.ac.uk is an important area. And just briefly, so I let others say something as well. Hong Kong, it's a completely different thing. If you want to send me an email, I can give you some tips afterwards, but it's a complex one. And just to finish, if anybody in the conference wants some help with some sample materials, send me an email, and I'm always happy to share my job hunting materials to anyone who wants to see them.
Okay, I can respond to Armando's question. So Armando, yes, thank you for the question. But I really think that you're making a single story of Africa here. Africa is a continent of 54 countries. So I think it's unfair to suggest that the African continent is far removed from our discussion or from all the tips that we've been sharing here. I think it's important to keep in mind that there are so many different academic cultures on the continent of Africa. So you have to maybe think about where you are. You're doing your PhD in South Africa, maybe learn more about the academic institutions in South Africa, the academic culture, the way it works. I do think that all of the tips I shared are really, they can be applied within the context of some other African countries that I am aware of. So the point I just want to make is, to be careful about that framing of Africa as being a single story or an exception. There's really so many things that are applicable in the US academic system or the UK academic system that are also applicable in the African context. Yeah.
I can pipe in and kind of hit all these questions in one go, or attempt to. So I'll start with the H-1B treacherous experience. So definitely start thinking about that. So I was on the F1, the student visa. Then I was on OPT. So I was on OPT briefly for a postdoc. So I got the offers, took a postdoc, was on OPT, and then the OPT so stretched into my first year of being faculty, and then they had applied for my H-1B. So most institutions, even in this sort of harrowing time, the norm has been they will apply for the H-1B for you. They will sponsor the H-1B. So that's what Boston College did for me. Now, here's what I've heard from multiple people who've gone through this. You have to follow up with a lot of these institutions and really make sure they're hitting a lot of the deadlines, even if they say they've applied or they're sort of working on your case. Why? Because that happened to me while I was like off OPT and then now on the H-1B. And there was this 2-week period where folks seemed a little confused about what was going on because someone had retired. And then, so you want to also be on top of that. Don't trust that everybody's on top of all your things, especially with all the things that are happening. Now, if you do get a campus visit or something like that, try to see in some of these informal conversations if there is an international scholar somewhere in the mix. So they might not have a meeting with you, but they might be somewhere. That helped me here to also figure out who to contact once I got here, and just ask about the experience, just, as a, and sort of like see how things shake out there. So I'd be very vigilant about sort of that process. And also think about if this works for you, if you want to maybe apply elsewhere and start making those connections with folks that are in the geographical places where you want to apply. On the interdisciplinary issue, so I'm technically in 2 departments right now, which means I had to de facto just apply as if I was speaking to different disciplines. Now, the language you have to use for that can be sort of tricky there. So I kept saying things like, or thinking things like, what is my scholarship at the intersection of, right? So if there's a node, what are the different things that I'm doing? And sort of like, how does that show with the theories I'm using, the methods I'm using, and the kinds of people I'm citing? So that's sort of like how I went about all of this. And then I looked at how folks were framing some of the job materials in other disciplines. So I'll drop the link quickly, but I went to Academic Wiki just to see sort of what other jobs were out there. I was looking at African studies, Africana studies, those kind of places, and film, as well as communication. And that was helpful to see the language that I could then use in some of my applications. I want to say a quick thing about Africa. So I did not apply on the continent, though now I'm like, maybe I should have or could have. And it was really helpful to also speak to scholars that are working in those places. So like WhatsApp groups, informal groups, where a lot of African scholars had a lot to say about the job markets there. If I was considering them, mostly timeline and just expectations and like, so like cultural institutional shifts, and the kinds of places that were getting grants. So the key is really to just, talk to people, because you don't know what you don't know until you talk to folks that are in those areas.
Maybe
Thank
I
you
would
so
just
much. Yeah, go ahead, Bingchun.
to follow up on what Dani already said about job searching in the UK, and then just to add a few more things. I think it is true that in general, compared to US universities, UK university probably put more emphasis on teaching. And the reality is also that for UK universities, the biggest chunk of their income come from tuition, especially tuition fee from overseas students who come here for a 1-year master's degree, the so-called PGT, postgrad taught degree. So because of that, because that's the biggest chunk of income, and often the hiring decision come from the teaching need for those PGT programs. And I think that's actually where people who have had their PhD training in the US could have an advantage, in the sense that both that they have taken coursework during the PhD. So they have a wider knowledge base that they are, able to teach maybe a variety of introductory courses. And secondly, it's more likely, I think, also compared to UK PhDs, that you will already have had teaching experience during the PhD. Although I would also nuance that by saying that I think also depends on which UK institution you are applying for. I think the more research intensive ones would still care very much about your research profile, your trajectory. And I see also in the chat box, there's a question about the number of publication. And I will just echo what Karin said. It's not so much about the quantity, it's more about the quality. And also it's about being able to demonstrate a pipeline when you go on a job market, in the sense that you will have a plan of, you already have maybe a couple of things under revision or under review, and then you also have something that you are, have in work progress it's important to demonstrate that you have a research agenda and there is something in the pipeline. Which then also brings me to another question I saw in the chat box, which is about the fit. And I think, again, Karin already answered that. And I just want to give maybe one bad practice example that is how you pitch yourself. I think overall, the fit really is about both being able to meet whatever teaching demand and research demand of the department, and also to fit with the overall intellectual ethos. So it's not so much about being, or repeating or having overlap with the profile of someone else in the department, but really is about your understanding of the overall ethos of the department. And that's something that can be quite subtle. And as Karin said, it's not as simplistic as, whether this is a qualitative or quantitative focused department. But I think equally, sometimes maybe job candidates are too keen to demonstrate that they will fit in. One year we had someone who came to give a talk, and the research presentation was excellent. And then when he started to talk about teaching, I understand it's because he was very keen to demonstrate he will fit in. He had on the PowerPoint slide almost the whole list of the courses we are offering, and basically saying that I can teach all of this. So I guess you can anticipate the kind of reaction from colleagues in the room. So I think staying true to yourself, being authentic, but also being humble, and then so I think, yes, this is not a place where a moment to be shy, but also think about how you present yourself, and also as communication scholars, think about your audience, how your audience will receive your message.
Thank you, Bingchun. These are highly useful advice we all need to keep in mind. Big thanks to all the panelists for your wisdom, for your insight. And also I see there's a conversation ongoing on the chat. And thanks everyone who asked questions, and also our panelists answering questions there. And I think we have 1 minute, and we have recorded this workshop, and we will share through our global communication and social change email list, and hopefully it will be useful on your journey to find your dream job. And before we let you go, we also have a few announcements. First of all, as a lot of Q&A already show, and also our panelists have advised, make yourself visible. So please join our division, join ICA. And I actually think ICA has the most comprehensive job as particularly in terms of international coverage. And also feel free to join our division if you are not a member yet, and put yourself up there. And I see some of our officer candidates in the audience too. And please vote. Please review for our division and the other divisions at ICA. And in November, Flo will organize a first-time reviewer workshop for our members and beyond. So please join us. And I know like 1 hour is really too short to answer so many different questions on the market, but we are here. Feel free to reach out, and if more demands, we hope we can organize a similar type of workshop, either virtually at ICA during the annual conference. Again, let's give a big round to our panelists. Thank you again for your generosity and for your wisdom. So I make sure we will wrap up on time. Thank you very much. Hope to see you in our future events and at ICA conferences. Thank you very much. Thank you for.
I don't even know.
Yeah. Thank you, Chikezie.
Thank you. Thank you, Wenhong. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone.